The average American family buys a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store about once a week. At $6 to $8 per bird, that's $312 to $416 a year on chickens someone else cooked for you. Poultry consumption data, National Grocery Retail Pricing, 2024-2025. Those birds are sold at a loss. The store loses money on every single one because the smell pulls you through the front door and past the aisles where the real margins live. The snacks, the drinks, the impulse buys. It's one of the oldest tricks in grocery retail. Costco investor filings, rotisserie chicken pricing rationale. The bird itself is typically a large commercial broiler injected with a sodium solution, cooked on a gas-fired rotisserie and sitting under a heat lamp for anywhere between 20 minutes and 3 hours by the time you grab it. It's convenient, it's cheap, and by the time you get it home, the skin is limp, the breast is chalky, and the best part of that bird, the concentrated juices and fond in the bottom of the pan, was scraped into a drain in the back of the store before you walked in. A whole raw chicken at the same grocery store costs between $5 and $12, depending on the bird. Roasting it at home takes about an hour of oven time and roughly 5 minutes of hands-on work. The skin comes out crackling, the meat comes out juicier. You keep every drop of what renders off that bird, and the kitchen smells like Sunday for the rest of the afternoon. Hollis Ward has roasted a chicken nearly every Sunday for 50 years. Same method, same pan. The method Verna taught him in a kitchen that still had a wood stove when he was learning to walk. He has never needed a second recipe. The chicken you buy decides the sealing of your roast before you unwrap the packaging. No technique in the world will make a bad bird taste like a good one. The standard broiler chicken sold in American grocery stores is a Cornish cross, a breed developed in the 1950s specifically for industrial production. It grows from hatch to market weight in about 6 to 8 weeks, nearly twice as fast as heritage breeds. Poultry genetics history, Cornish cross development. The meat is mild, the texture is soft, and the flavor is thin. It works, but it doesn't announce itself. A pastured chicken, raised outdoors on grass, eating insects and forage alongside its feed, takes 10 to 12 weeks to reach market weight. The muscle is denser because the bird actually moved. The fat is more yellow because of the carotenoids in the grass and bugs, the same pigments that color a pastured egg yolk. Flavor and fatty acid profiles in pastured versus conventionally raised broilers. The flavor is noticeably stronger, almost gamey compared to what most people are used to, with a richness in the dark meat that a factory bird can't produce. Hollis raises his own birds when he can. When he can't, he buys from a woman named Doris, who keeps pastured barred rocks on 40 acres outside West Plains. The bird he brings home weighs between 3.5 and 4 pounds, never more. That size matters. A chicken under 4 pounds roasts evenly at high heat. The breast finishes close to the same time as the thighs. A bird over 5 pounds, the kind grocery stores prefer because more weight means more revenue per unit, takes longer to cook through, and by the time the thick part of the thigh reaches a safe temperature, the breast has been overcooked for 20 minutes. Food science literature on differential cooking rates in large versus small poultry. A small bird roasts honest, Hollis says. A big bird makes you choose which part you're willing to ruin. The night before Hollis roasts his chicken, he does one thing to it. One thing that changes everything about the skin and the meat underneath. He salts it. Not a marinade, not a wet brine. The bucket of saltwater method that takes up half a refrigerator and leaves you with waterlogged meat that steams instead of roasting. A dry brine, salt, applied directly to the skin and the cavity, with the bird left uncovered in the refrigerator overnight. Here's what happens during those hours. The salt draws moisture out of the skin through osmosis, the same process we've talked about in the scrambled eggs and the rib rub. That moisture dissolves the salt, and the salty liquid is reabsorbed back into the meat, seasoning it well below the surface. Meanwhile, the uncovered bird in the cold, dry air of the refrigerator loses surface moisture from the skin. By morning, the skin is visibly drier, almost papery to the touch. Dry brining and surface moisture reduction. Lopez Alt, the Food Lab. Dry brine testing on whole poultry. That dry skin is the entire secret to crispy roast chicken. Moisture is the enemy of crispness. Wet skin hitting a hot oven doesn't brown, it steams. The water has to boil off before the Maillard reaction can begin, and by the time the surface is finally dry enough to brown, you've lost precious oven time. Skin that goes in already dry starts browning almost immediately. The result is the difference between golden, shattering, crackling skin and the pale, flabby, rubbery skin that most home cooks accept as normal. Hollis uses about a tablespoon of fine salt for a 3.5-pound bird, distributed evenly over the entire surface and inside the cavity. He sets it on a wire rack over a sheet pan in the refrigerator, uncovered, for at least 12 hours. Verna did the same thing, except her refrigerator was the back porch in November. Cold air and time, she'd say. That's all the bird needs before the fire. Most recipes tell you to rub butter on top of the chicken skin before roasting. Hollis does something different. He puts the butter under the skin. The logic is simple, and the difference is significant. Butter on top of the skin melts and runs off into the pan within the first 10 minutes of roasting. It bastes the outside briefly, but most of it ends up pooling in the bottom of the roasting pan, contributing nothing to the meat itself. Butter under the skin stays where you put it. It melts slowly against the breast meat as the oven heats up, basting the meat from underneath the skin for the entire duration of the cook. The breast, the part of the chicken most prone to drying out because it has less fat and less connective tissue than the thigh, stays moist because it's being continuously lubricated from a layer of melting butter that has nowhere to go. Hollis makes what professional kitchens call a compound butter. Butter mixed with finely chopped fresh herbs and aromatics. His version uses softened, unsalted butter, fresh thyme stripped from the stem, a crushed clove of garlic, and a pinch of black pepper. He mashes it together with a fork on a cutting board until the herbs are evenly distributed. To get it under the skin, he slides 2 fingers between the skin and the breast meat at the opening near the cavity, gently separating the membrane that holds them together without tearing the skin. Then he pushes the compound butter in with his fingers, distributing it in an even layer across each side of the breast. It takes about 60 seconds. Verna used lard instead of butter when butter was scarce, and she used whatever grew in the garden, sage in the fall, wild onion tops in the spring. The principle was the same. The fat goes inside, against the meat, not outside where the oven steals it. There's a printable version of this entire method, the dry brine timing, the compound butter ratio, and the temperature guide, linked in the description below. 1 page. I won't mention it again. Here's where Hollis disagrees with almost every recipe printed in the last 40 years. Most cookbooks and recipe websites tell you to roast a chicken at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Some say 375 degrees Fahrenheit. A few cautious ones say 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Hollis roasts at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Verna roasted hotter than that. Her wood stove ran closer to 450 degrees Fahrenheit once she had it stoked, and she didn't have a thermostat to argue with. The reasoning behind low-temperature roasting is that gentle heat cooks the meat more evenly and reduces the risk of drying out the breast. That reasoning isn't wrong in theory, but in practice, a chicken roasted at 350 degrees Fahrenheit spends so long in the oven that the skin never gets a chance to crisp properly. The surface temperature doesn't climb high enough, fast enough, to drive the Maillard reaction and caramelization that produce golden, crackling skin. You get a bird that's cooked through but pale, with skin that's soft and chewy instead of crisp. At 425 degrees Fahrenheit, a 3.5-pound chicken roasts in about 55 to 65 minutes. The high heat hits the dry, salted skin immediately. The skin begins browning within the first 15 minutes. The butter under the skin melts and protects the breast meat from the inside, compensating for the aggressive oven temperature. The thighs, which sit lower in the pan and are shielded partially by the body of the bird, cook at a slightly more moderate effective temperature, which is exactly what you want, because dark meat benefits from more time and more heat to break down its connective tissue and render its fat. A small bird at high heat is a system that balances itself. The geometry of the chicken does the work that complicated techniques like spatchcocking, flipping, or tenting with foil are trying to solve. That's why Hollis never learned those techniques. He never needed them. The right bird at the right temperature in the right pan does it on its own. Verna didn't have a meat thermometer. he says. She had a hot oven and a bird that fit the pan. That was the whole recipe. Hollis never puts his chicken on a metal roasting rack. He puts it on a bed of vegetables, a layer of roughly chopped onions, carrots, and celery, each cut into pieces about 1.5 inches thick, goes into the bottom of a cast-iron skillet or a roasting pan. The chicken sits directly on top of them, breast side up. No rack needed. The vegetables serve 3 purposes at once. First, they elevate the bird off the bottom of the pan, allowing hot air to circulate underneath, which means the underside of the chicken cooks more evenly, and the skin on the thighs doesn't sit in a pool of liquid and turn soggy. Second, the vegetables roast in the chicken fat and drippings that render down during the cook, absorbing all that flavor and caramelizing against the hot pan. By the time the bird is done, the vegetables underneath are deeply browned, soft, and concentrated, a side dish that cooked itself while you did nothing. Third, the vegetables release moisture as they cook, which creates a thin layer of steam in the bottom of the pan that keeps the drippings from scorching and burning. That matters because those drippings are going to become the best part of the meal. Hollis adds a few whole cloves of garlic, unpeeled, and a couple of sprigs of fresh thyme to the vegetable bed. Verna added whatever was in season: parsnips in late fall, potatoes when there were potatoes, turnips when there weren't. The specific vegetables don't matter as much as the principle. The bottom of the pan is not dead space. It's working the entire time the bird is in the oven. Verna would say a pan with nothing in it is a wasted pan, Hollis says. If the oven's on, everything in that oven should be earning its keep. The chicken has been in the oven for about 55 minutes. The kitchen smells the way a kitchen is supposed to smell on a Sunday. The skin is dark gold, almost bronze in places. The question now is whether it's done. Most people solve this by cutting into the thickest part of the thigh and looking at the color of the juice. If it runs clear, it's done. If it runs pink, it goes back in. This method works, but it has a cost. Every cut you make in the meat releases juice that you won't get back. You're draining the bird to check the bird. Hollis doesn't cut. He uses 3 tells. The first is the leg wiggle. He grabs the end of the drumstick and moves it gently. If the joint feels stiff and resistant, the bird needs more time. If the leg moves freely, almost loose in the socket, the connective tissue in the joint has broken down, and the thigh is done. The second is the juices at the cavity. He tilts the bird slightly by lifting one side with a wooden spoon. The liquid that runs out of the cavity tells the story. Clear golden liquid means done. Pink liquid means the interior hasn't finished. The third, and the only one he considers definitive, is the thermometer. He inserts an instant read thermometer into the thickest part of the thigh, not touching the bone. He's looking for 165 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the USDA safe internal temperature for poultry, the point at which salmonella and other pathogens are eliminated. He won't serve the bird below that number. Verna didn't have a thermometer and relied on the first 2 tells. Hollis bought his first one in 1994 and considers it the best $12 he ever spent. Once the bird hits 165 degrees Fahrenheit in the thigh, he pulls it from the oven, transfers it to a cutting board, leaving the vegetables and drippings in the pan, and lets it rest for 15 minutes. Carry over cooking again. The same principle from the eggs, the same principle from the ribs. The internal temperature will climb another 5 to 8 degrees after the bird leaves the oven, and the juices that were driven toward the center by the heat will redistribute back through the meat. Cut too early, and those juices run out onto the board. Wait 15 minutes, and they stay in the bird where they belong. Stop and think about what just happened inside that oven for the last hour. The salt you applied 12 hours ago seasoned the meat from the inside. The dry skin you created in the refrigerator overnight browned the moment it hit the heat. The butter you tucked under the skin melted against the breast and kept it moist the entire cook. The vegetables on the bottom of the pan elevated the bird, roasted themselves in the rendered fat, and protected the drippings from burning. The high heat crisped the skin, while the bird's own geometry shielded the dark meat from overcooking. And when you pulled the bird and let it rest, the residual heat finished what the oven started, and the juices settled back into the fibers. 7 steps. Each one set up the next. Not one of them is complicated. Not one requires special equipment. A pan, salt, butter, an oven, a knife, and the willingness to think about dinner the night before you cook it. That's what Verna understood that most modern recipes don't. A roast chicken is not a collection of independent techniques. It's a system. Each piece depends on every other piece. Skip the dry brine and the skin doesn't crisp. Skip the butter under the skin and the breast dries out. Use a low oven and the system never reaches the temperature it needs to work. Take out one piece and the rest fall apart. Keep all of them in place and the bird practically cooks itself. The chicken is resting on the cutting board. The pan is still in the oven or on the stove. Inside that pan, underneath the roasted vegetables, is a shallow pool of dark, golden brown liquid, studded with browned bits stuck to the bottom. Most people pour this off, wash the pan, and move on. That is the single biggest mistake in all of home cooking. What's in that pan is fond, a French culinary term for the caramelized proteins, sugars, and rendered fats that bond to the cooking surface during roasting. Fond is concentrated flavor. It's the essence of everything that happened during the last hour: chicken fat, butter, herb oils, vegetable sugars, Maillard compounds, meat juices, reduced and intensified by heat into a layer of dark gold on the bottom of the pan. To turn that fond into a sauce, Hollis sets the roasting pan on a burner over medium heat. He pushes the vegetables to one side. He pours in about half a cup of liquid, chicken stock if he has it, water if he doesn't, and scrapes the bottom of the pan with a wooden spoon. The liquid dissolves the fond and lifts it off the surface. This is called deglazing. Within 2 or 3 minutes, the liquid reduces into a thin, intensely flavored sauce, what the French call jus, that he pours directly over the carved chicken and the roasted vegetables on the plate. No flour, no cream, no thickener, just the drippings, a splash of liquid, and heat. A sauce that tastes like the meal itself, because it was made from the meal itself. Here's the number that puts it in perspective. A family that buys 1 rotisserie chicken a week from the grocery store throws away, indirectly, 52 pans of drippings a year. Those drippings never make it home. They go down the drain at the store. Over 10 years, that's 520 pans of fond that could have become the best sauce you've ever made, discarded because someone else cooked the bird for you. Hollis has never bought a jar of gravy in his life. Verna wouldn't let gravy from a jar through the front door, he says. She said if the food can't make its own sauce, the food isn't worth cooking. The next video on this channel is about feeding a whole family with 1 head of cabbage in 30 minutes. If that sounds impossible, you haven't met Hollis's method yet. Subscribe now so you're here when it drops. This Sunday, buy 1 whole chicken, a small one, under 4 pounds if you can find it. When you get it home, unwrap it, pat it dry, and salt it generously on every surface. Set it uncovered on a rack in the fridge. Tomorrow afternoon, take it out. Mash a tablespoon of soft butter with a few leaves of fresh thyme, a clove of garlic, and some black pepper. Slide that butter under the skin on both sides of the breast. Chop an onion, 2 carrots, and 2 stalks of celery into rough chunks. Throw them in the bottom of your heaviest pan, and set the bird on top of them, breast side up. Put it in a 425-degree oven for about an hour. Check the thigh with a thermometer. When it reads 165, pull it out. Rest it for 15 minutes. While it rests, set the pan on the stove, pour in half a cup of water, scrape the bottom, and let it reduce for 2 minutes. Pour that liquid over everything on the plate. That's dinner. That's the whole thing. 5 minutes of work and an hour of patience. Now consider what most families have traded that for. 52 rotisserie chickens a year, bought in a plastic clamshell, eaten standing at the counter, the drippings already gone before the bird left the store. Over 20 years, that's more than 1,000 chickens. Not one of them had crackling skin. Not one of them came with a sauce made from its own juices. Not one of them made the kitchen smell the way a kitchen is supposed to smell at 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. The skill takes 1 hour to learn. The cost of not learning it is 20 years of settling for less than what a $3 bird and a hot oven can give you. Hollis will tell you it's not about the chicken. It's about deciding that Sunday dinner is something you make, not something you buy. Verna never had the option to buy it. Hollis does, and he chooses not to. That choice, to keep doing it yourself when the world makes it easy to stop, is the whole point of everything on this channel. What's the one step you've never tried with a roast chicken? The dry brine, the butter under the skin, the dripping sauce, or something else? Tell me in the comments.